Hey there, Daily Gardeners. Really quick, Jennifer here. I just wanted to reach out and let you know about Podchaser. And this year, during the month of April, just like last April, they have launched their Reviews for Good campaign. And this is really important because every time you leave a review on Podchaser, they will donate 25 cents for your review and then 25 cents for my reply to World Central Kitchen. And it is all going to help the Chefs for Ukraine efforts. It's an initiative aimed at providing meals to individuals and families fleeing from Ukraine. And so far, they have served 1 million meals to those in need. And so I am very excited to be part of this cause. So what I'm asking is that you leave a review for the Daily Gardener, even if you've already done so, even if you did it last year, it doesn't matter. They will still donate 25 cents for your review. And then if you would do me the honor of leaving a review for the show, I will reply to every single review over at podchaser.com. And with your help, we will make this year the most impactful Reviews for Good yet. So write your review over at podchaser.com. And then if you want to share that review on social media, the social media of your choice, make sure to use the hashtag Reviews for Good and let other people know so that we can help out World Central Kitchen. So easy to do, and so much good can come from it. Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about garden history and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 6th. Today in garden history, we remember the German painter, printmaker, mathematician, and theorist from Nuremberg, Albrecht Dürer, who died on this day, April 6th, in 1528. Albrecht's work was extraordinary, and by the time he was in his 20s, he was already quite famous. During his lifetime, explorers began to shift their focus away from medicinal plants toward ornamental plants. And as an artist, Albrecht captured many of the new exotic plants with incredible attention to detail. And if you're looking for bunny art for Easter, you should really check out Albrecht Dürer's watercolor that's called Young Hair. It's a beautiful piece, and it is absolutely remarkable for its accuracy and realism. And you can print out a little one for yourself and put it in a frame and use it in a centerpiece. There are many different things that you can do with it, but it is really, truly beautiful. Now, one of Albrecht's most famous pieces is called The Great Piece of Turf, and he created this in 1503. This is an exceptional watercolor that shows a very realistic grouping of natural plants together in a community, and it features grass that has gone to seed, plantain, and dandelion. And in our modern attempts to think about plants in community, Albrecht's The Great Piece of Turf is a wonderful, centuries-old example of that. And today we also celebrate the birth of José Celestino Mutis, the Spanish priest, botanist, and mathematician who was born on this day, April 6th, in 1732. José is remembered as the architect of the Royal Botanical Expedition of the Kingdom of Granada, what is now Colombia, and that happened back in 1783. For almost 5 decades, José worked to collect and illustrate plants in Colombia, and he created an impressive botanical library there, as well as a herbarium that had over 24,000 species. During José's lifetime, only Joseph Banks had a bigger herbarium than him. And José's study of the cinchona tree at the Bogota Botanical Garden helped develop a cure for yellow fever or malaria. Now, the cinchona tree grows in the cloud forests down there in Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, and it's actually the bark of the cinchona tree that contains quinine, the chemical that's used in medicine. But during José's lifetime, cinchona was believed to have the potential to cure everything. And so the Spanish wanted José to work with cinchona and to cultivate it and figure out more about it. And so José, in his work, sent thousands of different specimens back to the Madrid Botanical Garden. He used local artisans to create over 6,500 pieces of botanical art, just a staggering amount of botanical art with José Mutis. And the collection that he put together remained in shipping crates until 2010. So a long time they sat there until they were finally exhibited at Kew. Today, those pieces of art in the Mutus collection are still at the Botanical Garden in Madrid, Spain. And they are folio-sized, meaning they're kind of oversized. And luckily, since they really haven't seen much daylight, they are in immaculate condition. And there are two other little pieces of trivia that are tied to José Mutis. So if you have to host a botanical trivia night, here are two things for you to consider. The 200 pesos banknote in Colombia bears a portrait of José Mutis, and then the Bogota Botanical Garden is named in his honor. And today we also celebrate Johann Zinn, the German anatomist and botanist who died on this day. He died young from tuberculosis at the age of 32, April 6th in 1759. Johann accomplished so in his short life, and he focused on two seemingly very disconnected areas of science: human anatomy, especially the eye, and botany. Now, from an anatomy standpoint, he wrote an eye anatomy book, and he became the very first person to describe the iris. And today, there are several parts of the eye that are named in his honor, including the Zinn zonule, the Zinn membrane, and the Zinn artery, all parts of the eye. But as a young man, Johann was appointed the University Botanic Garden director in Göttingen. He initially thought that the university wanted him to teach anatomy, but that job was filled, and so he got the botany job instead. And so one day he was working in his office and he gets an envelope of seeds from the German ambassador to Mexico. And so he grew the plants and then he wrote about them. He shared the seed with other botanists. The seed was very easy to grow. And those seeds were the zinnia. And if you are a zinnia fan, you will so appreciate learning about Johann Zinn. But he did tragically die young, and because of that, Linnaeus named the zinnia in his honor. Now, in terms of zinnias, the Aztecs actually had a word for zinnia, which translated to evil eye or eyesore. They didn't like zinnias because the original zinnia was a very weedy-looking plant. It had a dull purple blossom, and that's why it was originally called the Crescenia, which means somewhat coarse. But then when the French got a hold of the zinnia, they began hybridizing it, and they started coming up with all those wonderful colors, those head-turning, dazzling colors that steal the hearts of gardeners still today. And so you have this gradual transformation of zinnias going from eyesores to beauties. And this is how zinnias earned the common name, the Cinderella flower. I love that. So zinnias are a favorite flower of gardeners. They are also Indiana's state flower. And in addition to all of that, they're really great for student gardeners. They're great for working with kids. They've got really striking colors. They can be direct sown into the garden. Just could not be easier to grow. They attract pollinators like butterflies. And of course, they make a wonderful cut flower. And finally, it was on this day last year in 2021 that a really wonderful book was released, and I made note of it because it was called The Book of Difficult Fruit, Arguments for the Tart, Tender, and Unruly, and it was by Kate LeBeau. Now, in her book, Kate, who is an essayist, poet, and pie lady, shared everything about these 26 fruits. She wrote about their history. She shared about how they are grown in a garden, how they're used in a culinary sense, how they can help medicinally. So there's a lot of information about these 26 tart, tender, and unruly fruits. And that title grabbed my attention. I was so glad to have gotten her book. But I wanted to share just a little snippet of what she wrote about a few different fruits. About the Aronia, or the chokeberry, she wrote, a member of the apple family, and it's not poisonous. Like raspberries, the Aronia pigment stains clothes. Here's what she wrote about the Durian, the fruit from the tree of the hibiscus or the mallow family. Its unique rind contains a sweet fruit, but the durian is very pungent, and the odor shifts between sweet and stringent from peaches to garlic. She also mentions the medlar. It's a very squishy and sweet fruit. It tastes similar to an overripe date, toffee apples, or apple butter, and it is beloved by gardeners for its flowers. That's medlar. And then quince. I'll share what she wrote about quince. It has a bright fragrance of pear, apple, and citrus. And then once cooked, it softens, and the flesh of quince transforms from white to pink. Well, these are just 4 of the fruits that Kate mentions. There's 22 more. And in the book, she includes an essay along with recipes for each fruit. And I should mention that the fruits that make it into Kate's book are notoriously challenging. They either are difficult to grow or harvest. Their window of ripeness might be really brief. The fruit might have a toxic aspect, or it could be an invasive and just not suitable for the garden. But they are perfect for Kate's book. These fruits are her jam, and she shares all kinds of insights and culinary uses for these fruits. And she also has all these wonderful little tips, like she reveals why Willa Cather included pits in her plum jam. I'll let you figure that one out. Anyway, it's a great book. It's called The Book of Difficult Fruit, and it was named a Best Book of the Year by The Atlantic, New York Magazine, and NPR, and it came out last year on this day. All right, it's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Private Gardens of South Florida by Jack Staub. And I should mention that Rob Cardillo took the amazing photographs that are in this book. Well, this book is a treat, and I am thrilled to share it with you on today's show. It's been out for about 6 years, and that means that used prices of this book have gone down. This was a $50 book when it came out. You can now get copies for about $12, which just is such a thrill. But in this book, there are 22 private gardens that are shared in South Florida. And if you love tropical gardens, then you've got to get this book, because it's the only way you're going to see some of these secret gardens, these grounds that are so unbelievably designed. You'll get to meet a painter turned horticulturist who transformed her garden into a mysterious forest-like escape. There's a couple that created their garden after being inspired by the Near East. So their garden is something that you might see in a Persian royal garden. And of course, it's South Florida, so you're going to see all kinds of pools and fountains and ocean views and just incredible vistas, not to mention avenues of palms. That's something I love, because clearly we're never going to have that here in Minnesota. And so it's just such a stately, majestic aspect of tropical gardens. Now, of course, Jack himself gardens on Hortulus Farm in Pennsylvania, and his main concern about this book, and he writes about it in the preface, is he was worried he wouldn't find enough diversity. He really wanted to show the full spectrum of private gardens, everything from a grand estate to tiny hidden oases. He also wanted to find gardens who had owners that were very invested in them, that actually cared about them and had a significant relationship with their gardens. And I think, to me, that makes all the difference in the way these gardens are portrayed, because you can tell that these gardens are loved. Now, one other thing I want to mention about Jack Staub and his writing is that he is such a compelling writer, and he himself is passionate about gardens, and that comes through in the way that he writes about gardens. For instance, one garden he introduces this way: there is something very Hansel and Gretel about this garden, as it reveals itself so slowly and circuitously. One is nearly sufficiently disoriented to strew a trail of crumbs behind one, so that one is guaranteed a way out of the forest. I mean, people just don't write like that. And so I appreciate that about Jack and his writing. And so while you might be sitting there going, why would I get a book about the gardens of South Florida? Well, I would say stretch yourself. This book may show you gardens that are out of your growing zone, that are a little foreign, but you will learn a ton about composition, about design, and about how to look at gardens through the wise eyes of Jack Staub. And that, my friends, is very much worth investigating. This book is 256 pages of enchanting properties that will inspire you not only to partner with nature and design in new ways, but also to create your own little slice of paradise right in your own backyard. You can get a copy of Private Gardens of South Florida by Jack Staub with photos by Rob Cardillo, and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $12. But you'll want to act fast, because those used copies will go quickly at that price, and then it jumps to $50. So get a move on. All right, we end today's show with a botanic spark that celebrates the birthday of the English poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, who was born on this day, April 6th, in 1809. During most of Queen Victoria's reign, Alfred Lord Tennyson was England's poet laureate. And today, you can take a tour of Tennyson's walled garden on the Isle of Wight. Both his home and garden have been restored to their former glory, and this property gets top ratings on TripAdvisor. So if you have travel plans in that area, you should definitely add Tennyson's home and garden to your list of things to do. Now, when Alfred was alive, he loved what he called his careless ordered garden. I love that mix of carelessness and orderly. It's so Tennyson. And in 1863, he wrote this: I hope no one will pluck my wild irises which I planted. If they want flowers, there's the kitchen garden. And he also wrote, I hope they don't break my new laurels, whose growth I have been watching. And then he wrote, I don't like children croqueting on that lawn. I have a personal interest in every leaf about it. He sounds like a typical gardener, doesn't he? Well, there is also one of Tennyson's sentiments that has become very quoted by gardeners. It's a garden favorite, and I thought I'd end the show with it today. Tennyson wrote, If I had a flower for every time I thought of you, I could walk through my garden forever. Isn't that sweet? Well, that's it for today's show. Just remember that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. The next time you're over at Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. And if you'd like more of The Daily Gardener, you can subscribe to the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. And don't forget that you can also show your support for the show by using the Buy Me a Coffee link over at the website or in today's show notes. This is Jennifer Ebling. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.